You're listening to Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio with Rick Thompson, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, this is Allison. Welcome to Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio with your host, Rick Thompson. Our show is about sobriety and recovery. Each week we discuss a different topic relating to addiction. With the aim, you can gain some insight, guidance, and hope from our discussions. The focus is in 3 different segments. First, the viewpoint of the relatives dealing with a family member suffering from alcoholism and/or addiction, so they may assist them in obtaining treatment. Secondly, the psychological trauma and the emotional damage alcoholics and addicts experience. And third, the role of the insurance companies and associated providers and their part in the recovery process. And now here's your host, Rick Thompson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast. My name's Rick Thompson. Tonight we are going to change the format a little. We are having a show in celebration of Mother's Day, and our guest for this evening's broadcast are Allison, who is a mother, and a recovering alcoholic and a drug addict, and her daughter, Amber, which we will bring into the studio later in the show. Tonight, Allison is going to share her story with us. Hello, Allison. Happy Mother's Day. Were you spoiled?
Oh, thanks so much. Yes, I was, and I enjoyed it.
That's good. So you had some fun?
I did.
Your daughter ran around, spent money, and things that girls do.
That's right.
Good. Well, Allison, the show is yours.
Thank you. So I grew up in an entertainment family. My father's a composer for television shows, a lot of different shows in the 80s. He was one of 3 composers on Murder, She Wrote for almost 20 years. And he did a lot of other shows in the 80s. I knew I wanted to be an actress by the time I was age 5. I started acting by age 11. I got into drugs and alcohol starting at 11. I'll go back a little bit. My mom's side of the family, they're all addicts and alcoholics, and all their kids are as well. And my mom and dad fostered a lot of my cousins, so we grew up with a house full of kids. There were sometimes 5 or 6 of my cousins living with us at once, or visiting, and usually 2 or 3 at a time living with us. And my parents were young when they had me. They were just barely 23, so they were really liberal, and we had a big house. My dad did pretty well financially. We were spoiled, and we kind of do what we wanted, and we did. And it was a fun way to grow up. I also went on the road with my dad. My dad was on tour with people like Engelbert Humperdinck and Tom Jones, and I grew up running around backstage in Vegas and Tahoe and Reno and traveling all over. So it was a fun way to grow up as a kid. I loved it. Running around the casinos, kind of free to do what we wanted, between 8 and midnight at night. We had fun, but we didn't have a lot of supervision. And so by the time I was 11, my cousin who was living with us would steal pot from my mom or his mom, and we started getting stoned when we were 11. And when you're 11, you don't really know how to process that stuff. We would just am I stoned? I don't know. And eat candy and stuff like that. But by the time I started doing TV shows at this time as well. I think my first show was Silver Spoons. By the time I was 14, I was a reoccurring role on the original cast of Charles in Charge. And then after that, I was reoccurring on the new Leave It to Beaver, which is that same old cast of the Leave It to Beaver cast, but all grown up. And I played Beaver's oldest son's girlfriend, or one of them. And so I was doing this, stuff for Disney, commercials, print work, voiceover work, vocal work. My dad did a lot of the music for the Epcot Center at Disney World, so I did a lot of the recording for that, for some of the rides, etc. So I was working regularly all the time. My dad was working, and secretly with my friends, I was starting to get heavier into drugs. I started doing cocaine by the time I was 15. I was doing cocaine at parties. I was drinking. At 14, I had huge bottles of wine in my closet. My friends would come over and we would get hammered in my room. And so by the time I was 15, we would talk my mom and dad into dropping us off at parties. I'd become a pretty good con artist by then. And even though I grew up in a really liberal household, and my parents partied, they smoked pot and stuff. They did other things for a while, but they stopped doing that after a little while. I still was pretty crafty at hiding what I was really up to from them. So I would go to parties at 15. I was doing cocaine. By the time I was 16 and had a driver's license, I was hanging out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill every night, pretty much on school nights. It didn't matter. doing cocaine with
Shocking.
people like, 30 years, well, anywhere from 25 to 30 years older than me. Just, I was actually ODing in the rainbow at 16 years old, having cocaine seizures. I think 3 different times the paramedics had to come and carry me out of the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
It's amazing you survived.
I know. So then it actually progressed into much more from there. I was dating a lot of different musicians at that time. Pretty much anyone in the 80s rock scene, I was hanging out doing cocaine with them and doing other drugs, pills, and all of that. And progressed to ecstasy, and I would hang out in these other clubs downtown LA with all types of people, like really wealthy people. So it was unlimited, the drugs I had access to, and I could get in any club I wanted to at 16.
Of course.
And it was a very decadent lifestyle, especially for someone who was really not prepared for all that, really. So I ended up meeting someone who brought me deeper into the drug world, but more of like the underworld of it. And he was a dealer, and he had a lot of money, and he had a lot of drugs, like kilos of them. And he was crazy, and we were crazy together, like Sid and Nancy. And he taught me how to inject heroin.
That was nice of him.
And cocaine. And I got had a downward spiral really quick, really quick doing that. I was freebasing.
Right.
And to support a habit like that, I would shoot up speedballs 10 times a day. And I was a skinny little, tall but skinny girl. I got really sick on that very fast.
Sure.
So I found myself like running away from home at 17, injecting drugs, doing like intensive, massive drugs. I OD'd, I think, 11 times, where I was in hospitals, ODing on the street, in my car. Sometimes I wouldn't have a car, I'd hitchhike, or my parents were starting to figure out what was going on with me because I would be gone for weeks at a time.
Right.
And I'd be literally in downtown LA buying heroin on 6th and Bonnie Bray, like bad areas, MacArthur Park areas, buying crack cocaine and ODing like literally in the streets. And sometimes I'd come to and wake up and people would be looking at me. I would have the paramedics, I could hear the paramedics coming, like the sirens, and all I would know is, I have to get out of here, because, I knew what was coming next.
Sure.
Narcan and the hospital, and then, going to jail. I started getting arrested. But, so it got really bad. To keep a habit like that going, someone taught me how to prostitute, a street prostitute. So I learned how to walk down Sunset Boulevard, right near La Brea.
Right.
And at that time, there was a lot of people doing that at that time. It was before the police really cleaned that area up. Plus, there's strip clubs all over there anyways. It was a really easy place to find, someone to pick you up and go to a hotel.
Right.
And charge them $200 or $300. I could get high for a good 15 hours straight on
sure.
that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I did. And I was, delirious most of the time. I was so out of it. I wouldn't sleep for 2 weeks at a time. I would pick my face. I would have sores all over my body and my face, running around on the street, literally. My parents were, at this point, they were beside themselves. People that my dad knew and that knew me since I was a kid, would drive by and see me, like, hooking on the street corner and call my parents and say, your daughter is on Sunset Boulevard, hooking. And
right.
My dad would pull up sometimes, and I would see him, and I would run and hide in bushes. There was countless times when my parents would follow me. They would call the police. They had their cell phones, and I would run away and hide in bushes or jump in people's cars and run away. And I was really wild and out of control for years. This went on a couple of years like this. And I was with the boyfriend that was the dealer. So I had my first arrest, and that was kind of shocking to actually be thrown in jail. I didn't stay in there very long. I ended up in this next couple of years, between being 18 and 22, for 4 years, just way out there on drugs. I did street prostitution. I worked for a call girl service at certain points, which was all drugs and different other girls who were in a similar position like me. And I was way out there. And needless to say, my acting career just stopped. It halted. And I remember my mom saying, "Is this what you want? You're choosing this over, you have a beautiful life. You have everything. Is this what you want? And I remember telling her, yes, this is what I want.
Well, you'd obviously gone insane, so, you're not going to have a lot of rationale at that point.
And your whole life and will and mind is hijacked, by something. And so I ended up getting really into speed, and that got me off the speedballs and the shooting the heroin, the speedballs and the coke, because I OD'd so many times. I looked so bad, and I got arrested enough times. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 times, and I decided, okay, I don't really want this to keep happening. So I thought I need to do something that I could hide better, at least not have track marks all over my arms. And it was a little bit less expensive. It was a lot less expensive. So I started doing speed, and I didn't really like shooting it. It was too intense for me. So that made it better, I thought. And I thought, okay, this is something I can manage. I can snort it. And so I started snorting speed. That lasted about a year before I got pregnant. I got pregnant by the dealer boyfriend, who actually is more than 10 years sober now. So he's doing good now. But he was really crazy at that time, too. And I got pregnant when I was 22. And I was in legal trouble already. My first felony I'd just gotten as well, and I was on probation for that. So I went to my parents and I said, you know what, I'm pregnant, and they obviously knew I was still on drugs. So I got off drugs for the first time being pregnant. I was maybe a month pregnant, and I got off the drugs. And my drug dealer boyfriend, who was the father, actually helped me because he decided to get off them too. And miraculously, he got off the drugs at the same time. And that's probably one of the reasons why I did. He really helped me with that. So I got sober for the rest of my pregnancy. I stayed sober for a year after that, had my son, and we moved. The earthquake happened. I had my son in 1993. The earthquake, somewhat of a big earthquake, happened in the valley in 1993.
Right. Yeah, Northridge.
Yeah.
Right.
So we moved to, our house you couldn't live in it anymore. It was yellow tagged, but it was not. You couldn't live in it. Right. It was really bad. So my parents moved to Oxnard. They rented a house in Oxnard. We moved up there. And I don't know if anybody knows about Oxnard, but there's a huge drug culture up there, especially heroin and coke. Everything. I wasn't there more than a year, maybe a year and a half. I also went back to school at this time, so I went back to school. I went to Oxnard College. Actually did really well for 2 years there. Got straight A's. Went to Ventura College for my 3rd year. Graduated with honors with a AA, and got a lot of I got accepted to UCLA.
That's amazing.
And but during this time, on and off, I was still doing drugs and drinking, and I ended up transferring to UCLA. Went there for almost a year and got really heavy back into the drugs, but went down in a spiral very deep again. I was injecting again, ODing in my car, super sick, hanging out with people that were just as sick as me. One girl had to have her arm cut off from injecting drugs.
Right, but the abscesses, right.
Oh my God, it was so bad.
That's sad.
It's sad, yeah. It's
really
just tragic, and just, the lifestyle that we live, or the way we live is just beyond human,
People have really no comprehension of the parameters that we live in unless they experience it. They can look at it on television and they see a certain angle to it and they don't get it.
They don't understand what it's really like to be there and feel that and go through all that. Just feel that the emptiness and the depths of the despair. It's absolute despair. It's desperation.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Emptiness.
Sure.
It's a dead end. It's a dead hope, dead everything.
I had a friend of mine tell me once that he found himself in a room without windows or doors, watching the blackness part of the darkness. And it always stuck with me because if you've been there, you immediately get what that means.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a darkness in your soul.
Yes.
And so I ended up back there again with a little boy at home, and I would be gone for weeks at a time. I would come home and he would tremble. He was about 4 by the time this was going on.
Right.
And he would tremble, because I was there, and he didn't want me to leave, and he'd be so excited, because he hadn't seen me, And I had spent a couple of years with him doing good, and so we had emotionally bonded and connected. So it was deeply traumatic for him.
Right.
I ultimately ended up getting arrested again. I got a sentence of 6 months in Ventura County Honor Farm, Honor Rancho or something. I was there for 6 months. Ended up getting put in a women's halfway house. During the time I was in that halfway house, at a meeting, I met a man that I ended up getting married to. And I did pretty well after that halfway house. I stayed sober for another 2 years with his help. He was more my higher power, or my person that was in charge of keeping me in check or in the box, keeping me safe.
Right.
But you can't depend on someone else to do that for you.
No, you can't.
And so I ended up battling him constantly. It was a big responsibility for someone else to be in charge of you.
Yes.
Right?
Indeed.
Especially when you can't even control yourself. Really.
Yeah, they've got to be a real masochist to put themselves through that.
That's right.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, so he volunteered for it, and we did get very close. I was a terror to be with. I was all over the place, bipolar, and just giving him a lot of trouble all the time. Right. And I think he'd grown up with that in his family, so he was somewhat codependent on his end. And,
of course.
Yeah, so we all have a part in things. We all have a part in everything.
Indeed.
And ultimately, we had a period where we got married. I was pregnant when we got married. I decided I wanted a baby, talked him into it, and he went along with it. I got pregnant, and the more power I felt in the relationship, because it was misplaced power,
of course.
The more I got, the more manipulative I got. So once I was pregnant, I had more manipulating power, and I just really was a brat. And we got married anyways. But, I think I stole his Vicodin when I was 7 months pregnant. We got married when I was 7 months pregnant, and I was nervous about the wedding. I was in my disease already anyways in my head. And I stole his Vicodin because he broke his arm.
Oh.
And I was pregnant, and I got caught. And even though I had read somewhere, it doesn't pass through the breast milk or whatever, so I justified it. But I was doing that. I did that. And I got caught, and everybody shamed me. We got married. I didn't take the Vicodin, even though I still had more stashed in my purse. And we ended up getting through the wedding. We fought through our honeymoon, a lot of it. And I had my daughter. I didn't really stay sober long after having my daughter because I had a C-section. Just like my son, I had a C-section. So I got pain pills again after having my daughter.
Right.
And I was on pain pills from then on. So from her birth on, I was on pain pills pretty much all the time, nursing her on them. It progressed into doing speed again, OxyContin. And I was fully, when my daughter was two, by the time she was 2, I was fully progressed in my addiction again, nursing my daughter, taking OxyContin, doing meth, like really, really bad. And it was obvious, everybody knew it. It was horrible. And I was so far into it at that point that they all, everybody was trying to figure out what to do. What do we do? Calling the doctor, my daughter needs to be detoxed and all of that. So what ended up happening was I was also started shoplifting again, because that's what I did when I was younger.
Of course.
I got arrested for shoplifting, which is really common for...
It's a natural procession of things.
It's part of it for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was way out of control. I had my daughter with me. She was 2.5. I got caught. I think it was Long's drugs. And I was locked up. My husband came and picked up my daughter. And that was kind of that. Everybody was like, okay, this is going to stop this. We're going to something has to be done. I was pretty devastated for that. That turned into a 2-year prison sentence. I actually was sentenced 3 years and 4 months because I was really out of control when they tried to arrest me. And I ultimately did 2 years in Chowchilla in women's high security prison, which was devastating.
How was that? What was that experience like?
That was horrific. I felt it was lonely, scary, tragic. I was in there, even though it was tragic for me, and I mean, the depth of my sorrow and my grief going through that in there, and there's no comfort at all. There's just hard walls around you, and people are mean there. And the more vulnerability you show, the more you get bullied. Well,
let me ask you a question. Why don't you explain to our listeners what a typical day inside
prison
is like? Yes.
Well, the first 7 months, I was fighting my case in Twin Towers, so I was in like a fishbowl in a little room with the lights. The lights never go out, and you're in these clothes that make you sweat, and they're gross, and you're freezing all the time. It's like being in an ice box. You're constantly freezing. The food is gross, and for some reason everybody gains a lot of weight in there. You just blow up really fast. The food has got a lot of starch in it.
Sure.
It's just, and I to even deal with it, I was like going crazy, wanting to hurt myself, and they put me on psych meds. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with emotionally. I was just really went crazy, and but so fighting my case in there, I ended up gaining a lot of weight, and ultimately I was sentenced to prison. They kept telling me was going to be better. It was worse. That feeling of getting off that, it's one thing to be in jail, but that feeling of being in prison was a whole other level. Getting off that, riding that 6-hour bus ride, being shackled, and then arriving at this place, and the way that you're treated, and just, it's a really dehumanizing experience.
Right. And
when you finally get to after processing, you finally get to your cell, it's devastating. It takes like a day and a half to be processed, or you don't sleep, you're just laying on the cold floor. And you get to your room, you walk in this huge building with 2 levels, and there's just maybe like 200 doors or some massive amount of, it's just doors on the first level and second level, doors, it's just all doors. And when you step in, they call your name on your bracelet, and you step in front of the door in front of your number, and you go in, and the door shuts right behind you, and that's it. You're not leaving there for, I think it took 5 months. I stayed in a little room. I got there like June 17th, or around that time. It was so hot in Central California at that time. Mm-hmm. And it was like being in a little brick oven.
Because there's no air conditioning, right?
They had a swamp cooler, but it didn't really.
Right.
You could barely even breathe. We'd like lay there in our underwear, like with our mouths near the, swamp cooler, exhaust pipe or whatever, and it was miserable. But the most devastating thing was having to really feel the reality of, with nothing to buffer my feelings. It was raw feelings coming off of drugs after for years of using it, knowing that I had abandoned my children, that I hurt my family, which was painful. That was the worst part.
Of course.
And then just being alone.
Yeah, that environment is pretty horrible, having gone through that myself when I was really young. So yeah, it's it'll tear your soul in half.
Exactly.
Unless you really learn how to compartmentalize your feelings and your emotions, and psychologically, or you won't survive it. You'll go nuts.
You have to like freeze up. You have to become like stone.
Yes.
Right.
Emotionally, absolutely.
Yeah, and you can't show, because any kind of vulnerability, you're going to get bullied. You're going to get all kinds of attention you do not want.
Right.
And you're going to create trauma for yourself. And so, but, of course it was hard for me to do that. So, I cried a lot and almost got myself, like, I think I got 3 different times. I got punched once, bullied a lot, and then I had one episode where someone strangled me, where I almost went unconscious. They got put in the hole, but they didn't care.
Right.
But it was crazy. I mean, that place was a lot of people who are seriously have some, serious life issues. And then being in there, it affected me in this way. I was only there for 2 years, but I was around girls who had gone out with a boyfriend. He gets in a fight, someone gets stabbed, someone died, and they didn't know really what happened to that person. They just took off. Get in the car, let's go. Police show up 6 hours later at their door, arrest them both. That person died that he stabbed. And guess what? She had 2 small kids. She was only 19 herself.
She's an accessory to the fact.
Life in prison, 20 years old, 2 little kids she'll never see again in her life.
Yeah, sad.
A lot of them don't have parents that will take them and bring them to visit later, but a lot of them don't. Some of them don't have that family support. They'll never see their children again because they went out one night and their boyfriend got in a fight and they drove away from the scene.
Right.
And that's the end of their life.
That's it.
Maybe they'll get paroled when they're 40-something, maybe not. It was tragic. So I learned to really appreciate that I was only there for 2 years. And but prison is not recovery. No matter what little programs they have in there, it's not they're not spiritually based. There was some AA meetings you could go to, but it's not recovery. It's punishment.
Of course.
Or it's incarceration. So coming out of prison, My daughter was she was between 4 and 5. My son, he was 8 years older than her. He was 13, so it was a really hard time for a little boy, his identity stuff coming in. His mom's in prison. He had a harder time than my daughter. She was really young, but he remembers everything. He went through all of that with me. He would...
Understandably.
The neighbors would tell us, David's laying down in the middle of the street. He would act out like that. Like, I want to die, laying down in the middle of the street. So, I came out to that. Everyone was very cautious and wary of me, because I had been so unstable, so erratic, and so destructive. And I was cautiously welcomed. Not really,
I understood.
And I was acutely aware of that, and angry still, and still unstable. I was definitely unstable.
Well, after that experience, anybody's going to be unstable.
Yeah, coming out of prison, I was just as unstable as the day I went in. And I just wasn't on drugs. But eventually I was on parole for a year. I managed to get through that. And I shystered my parole agent into accepting me taking Adderall and pain pills because my back hurt and I needed, because I had ADHD, and he let me do that because it was not illegal. So by the time I got off parole, I was released from prison in November of 2006. I was on parole for a year. I was working in the mortgage industry, subprime mortgage industry, like shyster industry at that time.
Right, yes.
And it was right before the big,
The collapse.
Yeah.
Right. Countrywide and Fannie Mae and all that, right?
Yeah, so I started using coke again at that time. I'm partying again. My daughter's at home. I'm fighting with her dad, custody battles. I'm getting her late to school, letting her stay up till 11 at night. She's starting to become unstable. They're having issues with me having her. And so I was fighting them in court.
Right.
And the way that the laws are, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but even if a mother's on drugs, the court's still going to try to protect her right to see her child, whether that's to the child's detriment or not, or at least that's what the judges were saying at that time. So I got to keep having my daughter, even though I was steadily going down, spiraling down quickly. And I got back into heroin and coke again and shoplifting. And even though I was not injecting anymore, I was snorting so much. I would snort like an 8 ball of coke to myself a day.
Right, I understand.
And working at a strip club, prostituting again. And everybody knew it. And so it was just a matter of time before, and I was shoplifting. So I ended up getting arrested again. And I was on my way back to prison. And my husband divorced me while I was he started the divorce proceedings in 2004 before I even went to prison. But we completed that as soon as I got out of prison. I think that within that first 3 days he signed the divorce papers. So I was pretty much, on my own. I lived with my parents, and they didn't know what to do. And it was so bad again. It was just as bad as I'd ever been. And I got arrested again. And I was on my way back to prison. And that was devastating for me because that place, I thought to myself, oh, God, the horror of that place. Mm-hmm. Thank God I was put in a 2-year treatment program. It was called Impact.
Okay.
Impact, yeah.
That's really wild because I have a roommate that just moved in, and she has a friend of hers who is the brother of one of the guys that was in The Godfather, and I think he runs that place or has something to do with it.
Yeah.
And
yes.
This is like 2 hours ago I just heard this, and now you're bringing this up again. That's amazing.
It's a wonderful place. It's great. And they're really hardcore. I got put back in jail for telling a lie. I kept fighting, like, it's not illegal to lie. Like, technically, I guess not, or it is. I don't know. But they put me in jail for 2 weeks, back in jail for 2 weeks for telling a lie. Because they wanted to drive home that, the
point.
The point that it's a recovery based.
Right.
It's about honesty. Honesty with yourself.
Absolutely.
So I completed it after 2 years. I think I finished it in 2011. I went in 2009, finished it in 2011. And it changed my life. And I'm deeply grateful to all those counselors over there for that.
And you've been clean and sober for how long?
I'm in my 7th year. In October, it will be 7 years.
That's amazing. I mean, just listening to you, I've known you off and on for like 5. I would have never known ever
Oh,
that you had been through what you've been through. But then again, you listen to the things I've been through. I mean, you know, we're miracles.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Period. I mean, that's
yeah.
it, because we should have been on the embalming table.
Oh, yeah.
A decade ago.
Yes.
I want to ask you, how do you feel that your past experiences have helped you evolve into this period of your life?
I do believe that, we're eternal beings, spiritual beings having a physical life experience. Mm-hmm. And that as long as we only identify with the physical part of ourselves or our ego, we're going to experience a lot of pain in this life. Because a lot of things seem meaningless here. There's so many things that are unfair. There's so much pain and suffering, and just only relating to the physical aspect of life, I think, is a very painful way to live. And it was unbearable for me. So I think that I needed to go through the decimation of my ego and that whole paradigm of relating to just the material world,
right,
in order to connect with that greater aspect of myself, which is my spiritual nature, or God, or the universe, or spirit, however you want to call it, whatever words you want to use to describe it. I needed to connect with that and to forego all, anything associated with my ego, because whatever my ego gets involved in, its ideas, its plans, its agendas, are going to lead me into misery.
It's bad news.
Oh yeah, you can have all the wealth in the world and have everything, be on TV shows and all of that, but your ego is going to lead you into misery amidst all that.
Yes,
because that's not what life is about.
What positive aspects of growth have you inherited from being sober and clean?
Well, aside from connecting with, the spiritual aspect of things, which to me is not just my eternal aspect or my eternal being, but it's the fact that my eternal being is connected to every other eternal being that exists. We're all one. We're all part of the same energy field, or however you want to call it. We're all connected. And so when you really get that inside of you, and you really understand that whatever you do for others, you experience yourself the benefit, and whatever you do for yourself, by making the right choices in your life and living the right way, other people benefit, not just your family, but people that whoever you interact with. Sure. So really connecting to life in that way made me connected to something that filled me up, filled that empty hole inside of me, that empty space. And I felt fulfillment just from being connected to other people, being of service, and being there for other people. So it was that aspect that really connected me to life, and has kept me alive, and kept me here, and kept me from wanting to go back to that place where I separate myself off from everybody,
right,
and suffer.
Okay. Do you feel like that when you were in the entertainment business and you were successful, that made you more vulnerable to manipulation?
Yeah, being a young person who's trying to, for some reason I had a people-pleasing aspect, which a lot of people do.
Right.
And, I wanted people to like me and please people, whether it be boys or, people in the entertainment industry. And, it was part of it, but I never did drugs on set or anything. Most of my drug use was with my friends at school and after all that.
Right.
So, but it was a part of it. It made me, I guess, more self-conscious, more wanting to please people, more self-aware. Not self-aware in a good way, like self-conscious.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a part of it. I'm not sure exactly, how to relate the two, but I know it affected it. Me.
What was the turning point in your heart that made you take stock of where you were at and knew that you had to change?
I think it was the pain of being separated from my children. When my son was little and I was well in my addiction and nowhere near being able to really grasp recovery yet, it was still that pain of hurting him made it unbearable. So it wasn't fun anymore. It was just anguish.
Yeah, right.
But by the time I had my daughter, it was unbearable. So it was really that being separated from her from the prison. I never expected that. Being separated from my loved ones, namely my kids, and just the emotional pain of that. I was just like, nothing is worth this. I'd rather be bored for the rest of my life than ever go through the excruciating pain of being physically separated, emotionally separated like that from my children.
Sure. I mean, that's only natural.
Yeah.
Do you think your thought process just has changed in your interaction with others?
It has. It's been ongoing, though. My disease is still present. I still have to deal with it daily.
We all do.
Whether
Sure.
it's just, in my thinking at this point, and it's just, oh, you're less than, or you're insufficient. My ego is constantly, I'm under its full attack 24/7. Whether it's telling me you're great or you're insufficient, which are both lies. We're all equal.
Oh, absolutely. Your disease is your worst enemy. Your brain wants to kill you.
It
It'll
does.
tell you anything.
Yeah. It's amazing that we have something, an aspect of ourselves that wants to end itself.
Yeah.
End us.
It's incredible.
And it doesn't let up. It's daily. So, and it's very sophisticated, and it will attack me in different ways all day long. And I need recovery. I need truth. And I listen to audiobooks. I read all types of spiritual traditions beyond the steps, that beyond, like, I have to listen to this stuff constantly all day long because my disease works overtime.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your head never turns off. Unless you're sleeping.
Even when I'm sleeping, I dream about stuff and I remember it. Seriously, it's very.
Well, that gets better because I went through all that, and then after a while, it just goes away, and then you'll get to a point where you'll be present in the moment. It took me a long time to get present in the moment, where I didn't have to pull my head back from wherever it was going.
Yeah.
And I would have times where I would start to cry, and then the wall would go up, and you would go, "What the hell just happened?" And normal people don't understand this. They don't get it. They just think, "Oh, you're just nuts."
You're
whacked. Yeah, but that's not what's going on. It's the disease of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And when you deal with people in the rooms, how do you personally deal with the alcoholic and the drug addict who is still going through the phases of trying to find themselves and or that are still suffering?
Yeah. I'm deeply compassionate for people because I've been through so much emotional pain and so many excruciatingly emotionally painful experiences that I have like a deep compassion for people. And I approach it by being as honest and forthcoming as possible and listening to them without judgment.
Yes.
And ultimately, we're all connected. We're all one. And I just try to hold a space for them that is full of love, unconditional love and non-judgment, even if they're not there themselves yet, because ultimately that's their destination.
Right.
And I have faith and hope that they will get there eventually, one way or the other, somehow. And so I just hold that space for them and keep a positive feeling and in my heart and confidence in them, and hold faith for people that before they can actually hold it for themselves. Right,
and that does take a long time. And that's an incredible story. I would have never known. We really clean up well. We really clean up well. We're going to bring in your daughter, Amber.
Great.
And hi, Amber.
Hi.
Can you put on those headphones, please?
Yes.
Okay. Hi there.
Hi.
Okay. So I've got some questions for you. I'm not going to give you a bunch of heavy questions. I'm just going to throw a few at you and just to see what your thought process is in reference to your relationship with your mom. How did your mom's alcoholic and drug addiction affect you?
Well, it affected me positively and negatively because, like, growing up, not having her around was kind of difficult just because I was so young. And, like, the kids would ask me, like, "Oh, where's your mom?" And it was kind of a weird question for me. But it really gave me a good head on my shoulders. Like, I know not to do drugs and alcohol just because I know the effects that it has not only on the drug abuser, but on her kids and her family and everyone around her.
What kind of changes have you seen in your mom?
Well, honestly, like, she is such a nice person. That's what I think of when I think of my mom. She's just a genuinely really nice person. And not in a way like she'll buy me stuff, but like She's
I do that too sometimes.
yeah, but I don't know, she's just so sweet, and she listens to me when I talk, and we can talk about anything, and it's just really nice to have someone there for me who I can trust, and it's just really nice.
So when you guys get together and you go do stuff, what kind of things do you do? What kind of activities?
We hang out with my cousin a lot.
Yeah.
We hang out with a lot of family. We go to dinner. We love to shop. That's a for sure thing. We go shopping. We go to Disneyland a lot. We go to amusement parks. Just kind of things that I would normally do with friends. And yeah, I mean, what do we do? I'm trying to think about this now. Yeah, just amusement parks and shopping and dinner.
Right.
I get to do all the fun stuff with her.
Well, that's good. That's fantastic. That's good. When you're in school, do you see kids going through the kind of problems that your mother was experiencing when she was younger?
Oh, for sure. I have friends who I've dropped because I don't want to be around people like that. I don't want to be in the same circumstance that I was in years ago. And it's really hard for me because I want to be there for them, but it's, I want to be also there for myself. And it's really sad seeing kids do drugs and alcohol because it has such a terrible effect. And it's weird. It's definitely weird.
Yeah. I guess, when you're completely foreign to it and you're alienated completely from it, thank God, that when you see that, and your antenna must be really sharp to pick it up like before anybody.
Oh yeah,
I would
definitely.
think.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So what do you do in school? What's your major?
Oh, well, I'm in junior high right now. I'm in 8th grade. So I do my normal classes, which is like science and English. But I used to do show choir. I do film class. It's called CNN. And we make videos, and we anchor on our news show that we broadcast every day. And we play soccer at school, and that's pretty much it.
Well, that sounds like a really fun life.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 14.
Get your life ahead of you. You can call into the show if you have any questions or you'd like to share something with us. We'd love to hear from you. Our call-in number is 323-203-0815, 323-203-0815. And if there's a call coming in, we'll come to you. If not, then we'll just continue doing what we're doing.
Can I say something?
You can say whatever you want.
I do. Amber was going to Al-Anon for a little while because I think that she, even though I think she has she's maybe doesn't know where to draw a line. Like maybe she sees her friends going down that path, and she wants to be there for them and help them, but she also doesn't want to put herself and draw herself into that type of circumstance.
Right.
So it's like a line that she has to walk, and that has to do with it's codependency a little bit.
Sure.
Absolutely. How to handle the situation and protect herself, but be a good friend. And it's not an easy. It's not easy to navigate that stuff when you're 14 years old.
That's true. We've got a call. Hello, you're on the air. Welcome to LifeRepair.
Hi, Rick. It's Tim.
Hello, Tim.
Hi,
How are you, Tim?
I'm doing great. What a great guest. I'm sorry I can't remember her name. I can't remember my own name.
It's Allison.
Allison, what a wonderful story.
Thank you.
Boy, oh boy. Talk about in and out and the revolving door.
Yeah.
Wow. But God, thank God for sobriety.
Yeah.
Having your boy, I have a son who's 27. Mm-hmm. And 8 years ago, I got the phone call from my oldest son in Missouri. They lived in Missouri with my mother. Mm-hmm. That they had just airlifted Kyle out of Bowling Green on a fentanyl and alcohol overdose.
Yep.
And they couldn't wake him up, and they airlifted him to St. Louis. And boy, that whole Sunday, it was like, God, please wake Kyle up. Tell Kyle it's time to get up.
Oh, good.
Thank God he woke up. I had 8 years in the program. I got him out here. Today, he's clean and sober, going on 9 years, working in sobriety, loves sobriety.
Wonderful.
It's amazing.
What a miracle.
What a blessing, right?
Absolutely. Oh, man.
Yeah, Tim's story is kind of interesting, too. Why don't you give us a fast overview, since we only got a few minutes here?
Let me give you a fast.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick one. I'm 50 years in animation. I retired last year. I lived my dream. I saw a cartoon when I was 5, said, wow, I don't know what that is, but I want to do it, and I did it. 50 years. I got so clean and sober 17 years ago. 8 years ago, I started to notice a weakness in my right hand. I go to the doctor. He says, you got to go see a neurologist. The neurologist drops me like a hot rock. Lateral Parkinson's disease on my right side, and it steals my ability to draw. I'm crushed. I'm leveled. I'm devastated. And my best thinking, go drive to Mexico and drink my brains out. Best thinking for 32 seconds. Moment of clarity. God, I can't do this. I need help, and I need help right now. And I'm convinced a power greater than self gave me the ability to draw with my left hand.
Wow.
And for 8 years, I've been drawing with my left hand. Now I'm on new medication from UCLA, and I'm walking normal. Rick can tell you.
Wow.
I'm drawing with both hands.
It's amazing.
I'm doing some of the best artwork I've done in years.
Oh, so you got your right hand.
I got my right hand back, and I just self-published a new book called "Shaken Not Broken: An Artist's Journey Through Hell."
Wow.
And man, it is, and I went all to sobriety, all to the program, the 12-step program that gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. Great to talk to you, Rick. Great show. What a lovely, lovely, lovely lady you have on your show tonight.
Yeah, she's great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I hope I run
Tim.
into one of these days. Thank you, buddy. I'll see you soon.
See you on campus.
Thank you.
Allison,
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Amber,
Alan.
thank you.
Thank you.
For coming by.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week. I hope that you've been able to take away something from our discussion. Again, I'd like to thank my guest, Allison, and her lovely daughter, Amber, for being with me tonight, and to our callers, Mr. Tim. I hope that you can join us next week, and remember that you can download any of our previous shows at any time at www.latalkradio.com. Our mission is to provide a safe platform for those who are suffering from various forms of addiction. We're not professionals in the recovery business, just people willing to listen and offer suggestions to help those in crisis. And with that, in the words of the late, great John Flynn,
Disappointment is the caboose on the choo-choo train of expectation. Anything you want from anybody, you give them what you want from them. It's the only way you're going to get it. Life is about giving, not getting, day at a time.
Thank you, John. Thank you for listening. Happy Mother's Day. Good night and good luck.
You're listening to Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio with Rick Thompson, only on LA Talk Radio.